Morning. And we are ready for night two. Recapping last night, Columbus is up 1-0. San Jose's up 1-0. Dallas, same. St. Louis, and the Islanders. So one Canadian team played last night, and they lost. Tonight we've got two of them on the menu, and we'll see which one comes out of this alive. Starting things off, Carolina and the Washington Capitals. Of note, Calvin DeHaan not playing. He did make the trip to Washington, so DeHaan not playing in tonight's game, but may very well be available for game two, or it might just be a fake out by the team. This time of year, you will see guys traveling around that the team knows they're not playing, but you want to keep the other team off guard. You want to make sure the other team can't necessarily prepare for an entire roster when you're not telling them who's going to play and who isn't. Scoring leaders for these teams, Sebastian Aho, 30 goals, 53 assists, 83 points. I think that's just the beginning for Sebastian Aho. Teravainen, 21 goals, 55 assists, 76 points. And tonight we'll see whether or not they can recreate that magic in the playoffs. And they're against the back-to-back not suck of the Washington Capitals. Ovechkin, 51 goals, 38 assists. Backstrom, 22 goals, 52 assists. And this is a huge test for both teams. Washington watched 3 out of 5 teams lose at home last night. And if I'm Todd Reirden, I am at practice today, or I'm sitting with the team today, and I'm saying, hey, do you see what happened? We have to make sure we're not added to that list. We have to make sure we go out there and get our job done. And I would expect Washington to come out and play very well, but I think Carolina is a good test for them. I think we're going to see quite the series. Now, when you look at all-time records of these teams, it's a bit distracting. Now, I didn't separate Colorado's out from Quebec, but I did separate Carolina's from Hartford because it's stunning. All-time, the franchise, Hartford and Carolina, 10 series wins, 12 series losses, but Carolina has 9 series wins and 4 series losses. Yeah. Hartford, 1-8. Not a great record. Bring back the whale. They've been much more successful as Carolina. 59-68 is their overall record, but as the Carolina Hurricanes, they're 41-37. Again, much more successful franchise as the Hurricanes when they're in the playoffs, which is almost never. They do have a Stanley Cup to their name, that being from 2006. And so both teams have a cup. On the Washington side of things, of course, Ovechkin, 51 goals, 38 assists, equals an amazing season for him. And we keep waiting for him to age, and he just doesn't. And tonight, he has a chance to improve on this. Their all-time record, 20 wins, 27 losses as a franchise, like series-wise. And in games, 132 wins, 143 losses. They want that to be 148 wins by the end of the playoffs. That would mean another Stanley Cup for Washington to add to that one they already have. This is a really solid matchup for the Caps. I understand that the Carolina Hurricanes were a team that they handled relatively easily during the season. Tampa handled Columbus relatively easily during the season as well. And we saw how last night turned out. Home ice kind of turned out to be a bad thing last night, and we'll see if that happens again tonight. If it does, that might end up making me unhappy with one result, kind of, sort of. And I want to get to that. So tonight, Boston and Toronto started up again. And although you may think these teams have met each other in the first round every stupid year for every time Toronto's in the playoffs, they play Boston, that's not really the case. They played them in 2013, they played them in 2018, and now they're playing them this year. It is quite a rivalry. These teams don't really like each other. I get the feeling the fan bases don't really like each other. Which, if you're a Toronto fan, I like you. You're okay. You're good people, mostly. Because Bruins fans are nice people, mostly. Every group has got that drunken idiot at the back who just can't wait to do a kegger. And you're explaining, we're in church. This is not the appropriate time to be discussing this. Anyway, and I say that as a guy who hasn't gone to church in a long time. Anyways, there is some news when it comes to this game before we even get into the meat and potatoes of the fact these teams don't like each other. Backus is a healthy scratch and Kuhlman's in. Now, for anybody who's going, wow, David Backus is a scratch, that's a flop of a contract. Yeah, Boston knows. We as fans know. And as a Bruins fan, I am very happy Carson Kuhlman's going to be in the lineup instead of David Backus. There's a reason Backus has seemed a lot more fighty this year because he's trying to preserve his spot in the lineup. Hasn't worked. So with Kuhlman in, that's a faster presence, hungrier guy. And I think that gives the Bruins a bit of a different look than if Backus was in there. Rask is going to start. I have been very vocal about the fact that I think Rask is on a very, very short leash. I do. I think he's on a short leash, and if he does not have a good game tonight, they will not hesitate to go with Halak for game 2. Sparks will be the backup tonight. Hutchinson's wife is having a child, so until that baby comes, Sparks is the backup. So, turns out my preview was right after all, at least early on. And again, if Toronto has to go to their backup goalie, that means either Anderson's been hurt, which hurts their chances of winning tremendously, or they get bombed and Anderson is pulled. So there's one of two reasons that Hutchinson would have seen the net in the first place. And so Sparks with the backup, Corrali's still out for Boston. It looks like Moore's still out too. Moore isn't likely to be back until probably game 3 or 4 from the sounds of it. I honestly, I'm at the point where I've heard so much negativity about the Leafs from Leafs media. I don't get it. I don't understand. And it's to the point where I'm kind of feeling bad for Toronto. And it's like there's a part of me that's saying, in Boston, we won a Stanley Cup in 2011. I'm okay if this is not the year, if they go out in the first round against Toronto. Because then the media will have to find something else to be really negative about. Leading scorers, Mitch, pay me $12 million, Marner. He doesn't say that, just I think there's probably going to be Marchand skating out onto the ice with a piece of paper to tape to his back that says pay me $12 million. And then Marchand could go, look what his back says. Hey, Babcock, look what his back says. You should bench him. Look for a lot of talk back and forth between these teams. Marner, 26 goals, 68 assists. Tavares, 47 goals, 41 assists. Excellent year for him. On the Boston side, Marchand, 36 goals, 64 assists. He hasn't played hockey in about a week. We'll see if there's any rust there. Pastrnak, 38 goals, 43 assists. I get concerned when a guy sits out multiple games and isn't in game action for a while. I get concerned that maybe it'll take them that half of the first period to really get back into it, and that can be the most dangerous period of the game, especially at the start of the playoffs. Records all time when it comes to series. The Leafs have won 58 series. They've lost 54. Bruins have also won 58 series. They've lost 65. Now, the Bruins have won a lot of series because a lot of their winning has happened since expansion. Toronto, a lot of their winning happened before expansion. Overall win-loss record, Toronto 259 wins, 281 losses. Boston 306 wins, 315 losses. Most of those 315 losses by Boston were suffered at the hands of the Montreal Canadiens. I hope they enjoy not being in the playoffs this year. 13 Stanley Cups for Toronto, 6 Stanley Cups for Boston. So Boston going for number 7 and Toronto going for their first since 1967. It's a team with a very proud heritage. You just have to go back a ways to find the Stanley Cup wins. So I am kind of torn because I don't want to see Toronto get wiped out and have the media just having a frenzy with that because, again, what I watch, whether it's TSN, Sportsnet, Canadian media, nationwide media, they talk a lot about the Leafs. So it would be nice to see some kind of a retribution for the Leafs kind of story. It's a shame it's against Boston. Like, if it was against somebody else, I would probably be cheering for the Leafs in the first round. It's going to be a very interesting series. Probably goes, when I think about it, it probably ends up going 7. I know I took Boston in 6, but I think this series is going to be really close. Last up, finally, Colorado in against Calgary. I think Calgary's had an excellent run. I think that the Flames are a pretty solid team. up front on the blue line, and I think their goaltending's underrated. Now, I haven't heard who is starting for Calgary. Let me double check. Okay, so it will be Mike Smith. I double checked to make sure. It's going to be Mike Smith and Philip Grubauer. So, a few months ago, we would have been like, yeah, that'd be Riddick and Varlamov starting that series. Nope, Smith and Grubauer. Smith's going to be on a short leash, too. Much like Rask in Boston. I think that if Smith has a rough night tonight, we'll end up seeing Riddick in game 2. This is going to be really, really interesting because James Neal, the real deal and all, he was a Stanley Cup finalist in 2017 with the Nashville Predators, 2018 with the Vegas Golden Knights, and now he's trying to make it 3 years in a row with 3 different teams, which I would think would have to be a record. That's just one of those weird, random things that would have to be a record. I do think this series is going to be a pretty solid series. I know I took Calgary in 5. It doesn't mean I don't think the series is going to be good. There's usually 1 or 2 series in the first round that don't go very long. And I guess I'm just seeing Calgary as being better than a lot of other people do. We'll see how it turns out. Leading scorers, McKinnon, 41 goals, 58 assists, 1 point short of 100. Rantanen, who's apparently back, 31 goals, 56 assists. But again, much like we found out with Hedman last night, when a player hasn't played in a while, and in Hedman's case it was only 4 games, Rantanen's it's longer than that. Players have played in a while, you don't know what you're getting. And playoff hockey is so much more intense and so much more action that it can be really tough for a guy to get up to speed in the playoffs. On the Calgary side, Johnny Gaudreau knows Nathan McKinnon's playing as he also finished with 99 points. 36 goals, 63 assists for Johnny Hockey. He was 1 point short of that 100 point record, and we'll see if he gets to that next year. Monahan, 34 goals, 48 assists for him. Some ups and downs towards the end, but he seemed to be getting it together at the end of the year. We'll see how it works out for him going into the playoffs. Their all-time records, and this, of course, includes the Quebec Nordiques for Colorado. 25 series wins, 21 series losses. Yes, this will be much better for them since going to Colorado. 137 overall wins, 125 overall losses, and 2 Stanley Cups. So, 2 Stanley Cups for the Colorado Avalanche. On the Calgary side of things, their all-time series record, 16 series wins, 27 series losses. And it is kind of surprising that Calgary's the second lowest on the board because I can remember back to the Flames of the 80s and how great they were. Thing was, every year, first or second round, they had the Oilers. They were in the Smythe division with the Oilers, that machine of the mid-80s, late 80s, and so they couldn't get out of the second round. So this conversation of a team that's top 2 or top 3 or top 4 in the NHL not being able to get out of the second round because they have a juggernaut against them, yeah, the Flames remember that from the 80s. Their overall win-loss record, 99 overall wins, 124 losses, meaning tonight they can get their 100th win as a franchise in the playoffs. Their record includes the Atlanta Flames, who never won anything in the playoffs, so it's not a huge difference maker. It's 6 series losses as the Atlanta Flames, which was part of the reason that Atlanta didn't support the team all that great. Honestly, though, they were a decent team. They ended up winning a Stanley Cup, of course, in 1989 as the Calgary Flames, but the Atlanta Flames were a decent team, too. It just didn't work. So there you go. The Colorado Avalanche and the Calgary Flames should be a very interesting one because for a team that finished with 107 points, there's not a lot of respect being thrown at the Flames. But when you look at last night with Tampa, maybe that's the key. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. I love the playoffs. I'll talk to you again soon.